So I took a loss last Friday, and this is a trade recap of that trade. Overall price action is still very bullish. This was Friday overnight's price action. We printed Asia high, Asia low, similar to what ES was doing, but actually my focus now is on NQ. So the moment that London opened, I'm going to zoom in a bit, it actually provided a good long setup. So let's zoom into the 1 minute. So we had this rather aggressive sell-off, hitting Asia low, bouncing into this gap, but then rejecting again, because that was, this was London open. And what you often see is that if it wicks Asia, it first does a fake out and then actually takes out the low. And drawing the gaps here was a bit tricky, because you have not a singular gap, also not on the 2 minute, which I can show you. There was a singular gap on the 2 minute, but it was way too small, so that's only this one. That didn't give a proper level, but I will draw it in because we had two things going on. We had the gap here. We also had a bullish 2 minute gap here. I'll just draw it green, just for the sake of showing. This was my combined 1 minute gap. So it manipulated, price manipulated after that London open. There was a small 2 minute gap, and there was a rather big bullish 2 minute gap. So I didn't trade this, I don't know why actually. Price printed this low, reacted instantly, and it went through this gap, but actually started chopping a bit. And normally I prefer to have that gap a little bit lower, a little bit clearer as well. But in hindsight, I mean, once it broke above this gap, you could have waited for a change in the state, which would be here. Based on the 2 minutes, maybe it would be a little bit lower. Let's say change in the state was here, and then you could, if you wanted to long, because there was a lot of good liquidity here. Because if I can draw these rounded edges, that normally provides me with really good liquidity levels, which would be here. And you still have Asia, of course, as a target, because you have multiple highs printed here. So we have this manipulation, a bounce, and then you could have traded this gap, but then actually put the stop below. Because I would not really just assume that this would hold. I think on the 2 minute this actually held quite nicely, and already for the first week you have a 2R trade, and as you can see all these levels were hit perfectly, and I think it went just straight for Asia high. I would not hold it that much, because this is already 3.5, you have a 4.2, and back to Asia high is a 5.5. which is an absolute ridiculous long. Price is so bullish, it just doesn't really make sense shorting price, which is what I did, and I failed at it. So what happened here is that price just grinded up staircase, and it left a lot of untapped liquidity. So that's my low resistance liquidity run. And of course, the moment that market opens, because I think there was no news, maybe at 10 o'clock. So the moment news, US opened, of course, volatility stepped in. All-time highs were here, and it was just moving up and down, actually printing or just tapping the all-time high, almost to the tick. And for me, when it ticks it like this and just immediately sells off, that's actually a really good area to go short. But, oh, let me just first say and. On the 5 minute, because that's actually where this trade was based upon. So we have this really good candle on the 5 minute, a wick into all-time high sell-off, and at the same time you can see the higher time frame SMT with ES. ES was nowhere near all-time high. Moreover, we printed a bearish SMT on the 5 minute or on the 1 minute, depending on where you were. So what did I see? I think that was the gap. I think I drew the gap based on the 4 minute. I have to think now. I think it was based on the 4 minutes. So I drew this gap, and for me that held relevance because it also provided some resistance here, and I had a potential breaker. So what I do is oh, did I do the... No, it was on the 2 minutes. Just wait a second, I'm messing up a bit. Zip. Okay, so I think on the 2 minutes, but why did I take the 2 minutes? Because it gave me some clarity on the lower time frame, but on the 3 minutes, this was the low of the gap. It was the same on the 3 minute, and it was the same on the 4 minute. So it did not make too much sense for me, because I was constantly flipping between the 2 and 3 minutes. You have the change in the state, and based on what did I do that? I think on the 5 minute. Yes, so I have a 5 minute change in the state, and I have a 4 minute close below. So I was thinking, okay, even though this was based on the 2 minutes, the close below should happen on the 2, the 3 and the 4, either or. So I was just watching price, and price, as it would normally do, provide some support, but ES was just really heavy. And at this point in time, let's just go back one bit, because this is where, of course, the magic happened. I saw this close, and this was also a close on the 3 minute. It was also a close on the 2 minute, of course. So I said to myself, good, this is for me a good moment to short, but I will put the stop straight above the gap, because this is quite a 2 minute. I thought I give it as much space as possible. There was not really a wick to trade from here, and this was already too far for me. So I was thinking, if we get a retrace, this is my absolute first target here. So I put partials on the 1.5, and I also thought, if we get below, because there's quite some liquidity here, then it's probably very probable that we start running all these stops into London low. So here I flipped to the 2 minute, and I just started watching. And at first it went quite well to a, well, 0.7, which is not too fanatic, but as you can see here, I got stopped out in this wick already. And I was watching, and why did I get stopped out? I think at first because price, of course, was very bullish. So in order to get some bearish flow, most likely you would get some fuckery to the upside, which is okay, but not suitable for my relative tight stop. But what I also saw is that even though, I have to go back to the 4 minute here, even though, so I'll mark this one out, even though the 4 minute got closed on MNQ, it did not get closed on, it did not get a close on ES, as you can see. And to be honest, the fact that the weaker of the two pairs did not actually close too bearish as MNQ did, should have been a warning sign for me. So even though this was an absolute valid setup, it had everything: higher time frame SMT, all-time high break, but also a really tiny tap into that level. So it did not close above, no, it wicked it and just sold off immediately. And on the lower time frame we had a really clear gap. There was a breaker, change in the state, but of course not hit yet. So that would also mean for me that this would be quite a, in hindsight, a risky trade, because it can hit the change in the state. It barely did it, but hit the bottom of the breaker. That's why this would be my first target, and then it could have bounced as well. If I would have a close below the breaker, then actually I think it would still provide with quite a decent RR. So there were a few warning signs for me that should have told me, okay, maybe this is still a little bit too premature. Because if I would have gotten the close below the break, stop above the break, and then just trade all the way down, I think this would have been quite a safe trade, which I think didn't happen in the end, because it did sell off, but not as far as I would like. So I got here below, and I was not really planning to enter here. And now suddenly, ES said, okay, let's dump, right? Because the price action, the bounce here was really weak within the gap, while actually NQ was printing higher. So for me, I could have waited. Next time I can wait, okay, let's wait until both pairs close bearish, because at this candle now ES was closing bearish while NQ was not doing that. And I think I got still a bounce into my entry, and then we got this. So at this point we did get a wick below the, like a close below the break. So in the end my setup would fail, right? Because this would be my alternative short. I would trade this one, and from here on, and that's also what I need to take into account, that ES already went quite deep, and at this point in time I think we were back at bullish momentum. I mean crazy bullish momentum. So we got back at all-time high again. So, you know, if you look at NQ, the setup in itself was legit, but there was a warning sign based on price action of ES, and I could have waited longer. Actually, I could have waited for this move down to trade the retest of this this level here, or take this gap, whatever. But ultimately I need to be very sure of going short in a market that only wants to go up. And just to show for statistics, I took because I cannot show the executions, but I did make a picture the moment I was stopped out to show the executions. So there goes.